A las 7 horas y 17 minutos de la mañana del 30 de junio de 1908, el cielo se partió en dos y se desplomó sobre Tunguska, en la taiga siberiana. Fue una explosión 1000 veces más potente que la que destruyó Hiroshima cuando cayó la bomba atómica décadas después. 3100 kilómetros cuadrados de bosque quedaron arrasados por una gigantesca bola de fuego que cruzó el cielo. Estalló a 3 kilómetros de altura, provocando una explosión equivalente a una bomba de 40 megatones. En los últimos tiempos han surgido nuevas hipótesis que pretenden explicar qué sucedió aquella mañana. Sin embargo, el origen de la bola de fuego sigue siendo un auténtico misterio, uno de los enigmas más apasionantes del pasado siglo XX. ¿Un meteorito? ¿Un cometa? ¿Una nave extraterrestre? ¿Un experimento de un científico visionario? Reconstruyamos lo ocurrido. Fueron miles los testigos que observaron en aquella región de Siberia algo parecido a un objeto oval en llamas. Era de color blanco azulado, no emitía ningún tipo de ruido, silencioso como un soplido recorrió el cielo a una velocidad de 11 kilómetros por segundo, descendiendo desde lo más alto. Y a partir de este punto comienzan los enigmas. Las más recientes investigaciones han reunido más de 900 testimonios de quienes dicen haber visto cómo la gigantesca bola de fuego se detuvo en seco modificando su ruta. Instantes después estalló. No hubo víctimas mortales. Un milagro porque aquella devastación tuvo lugar en una de las regiones más despobladas del planeta. Si hoy una esfera de similar tamaño estallara sobre la capital de España, toda la comunidad autónoma de Madrid quedaría destruida para siempre. Pero la taiga era y es casi inaccesible, por ello nadie se acercó al lugar hasta pasadas casi 2 décadas. Fue en 1927 cuando llegó al epicentro de la explosión un legendario explorador ruso, Leonidas Kulik. Allí esperaba encontrar un gigantesco cráter y restos del supuesto meteorito, pero no había nada, salvo kilómetros y kilómetros de árboles truncados, arrancados de raíz y en su mayor parte tumbados radialmente. Vista desde el aire, la disposición de los árboles del epicentro de la explosión, que se encontraban tumbados, ofrecen la curiosa forma de una mariposa. Y decimos ofrecen porque recientemente un equipo de investigadores de la Universidad de Bolonia se acercó al lugar. Han contabilizado 60.000 árboles tumbados. Y nada o casi nada ha cambiado desde entonces, salvo un hecho singular descubierto por el equipo italiano. El manto de cenizas que generó la explosión ha originado un auténtico vergel, como si tras el cataclismo el terreno se hubiera fertilizado. En un primer momento, los investigadores de Bolonia concluyeron el origen desconocido de aquella bola de fuego, y de entre todas las posibles hipótesis solo pueden suponer que se trató de un enorme asteroide o un cometa de hielo que estalló antes de impactar contra el suelo. Sin embargo, los mismos investigadores bolonieses han tenido que admitir su desconcierto. No existen restos químicos, ni macroscópicos, ni microscópicos que indiquen que allí cayó un asteroide. Y sin embargo, los investigadores de la Universidad de Bolonia sí han encontrado otros efectos de la explosión: aumento de la biomasa, mutaciones biológicas en el lugar, anomalías paleomagnéticas, crecimiento excesivamente rápido de los árboles que crecieron después de 1908 o alteraciones en el factor RH de los habitantes de la taiga. Y estos últimos indicios solo pueden deberse a una razón en relación con la explosión, que hubiera sido de carácter atómico, una hipótesis que fue propuesta en 1946 por el investigador ruso Alexander Kazantsev. Comparó los efectos de la explosión de Tunguska con los de Hiroshima. Eran idénticos. Además, en los círculos concéntricos de los árboles se detectó un incremento del tamaño en los correspondientes a los años posteriores a 1908. La razón de ello, radiactividad. Pero claro, aquello ocurrió hace casi 100 años y no se habían creado armas que la generaran.
Hi everyone, how you going? I'm just going to play a quick shape one. Well, some shapes of a building. I'll just wait for a few people to come in. Hi everyone, how you going? Hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. I was going to share this the other day, but I got distracted. I was watching a program news in America, and they showed the children's hospital, and then I thought about it, and I remember seeing a post about this one, the Melbourne one, but look at the logo here for the children's hospital. So that's the Royal Children's Melbourne. I found a few of them actually all over the world. This is the Adelaide one. Of course, it's got this one I just spotted when I was looking through the maps. I was looking at the Brisbane one, and I went out and checked it out the other day. So 2010 there was nothing really there. Nothing. It just sort of appears out of nowhere. So 2013 it's there. There's a Perth Royal Children's. They got that same tacky colour up here in Brisbane. It's like you know, that aluminium stuff they put on the outside. So this one isn't quite the same as the other ones, but so this is a Darwin one. This is the Brisbane one that they're building, and I went and checked it out the other night. They got a lot of demountables sort of sitting there. But this is on a PFAS contamination site. All this area. And this is where the federal government's supposed to be building it. Or it might be in here, I'm not sure. So it's a Mater Hospital and private hospital in Brisbane. It's similar shape. They haven't got a newer image. This hospital's children one. It's already finished. Finished a long time ago. Similar shape to the Adelaide one. Hi everyone, how you going? I was watching a documentary the other day about Tesla and, you know, like the Tungsten event, and they're going on that they don't know who did it, but I actually think it might have been Tesla or Tesla's device, and I just did a search and yeah, someone else had the similar thinking. Did you know that in 1908, and he was 52-year-old in 1908, in Siberia, one of the most catastrophic, mind-blowing and mysterious cosmic impact catastrophes ever in the history of civilization occurred, and yet it wasn't widely known outside Russia, save for a few astronomy and research scientists of enclaves, until around the 1970s. Even interested research parties didn't learn about or even set foot onto the site, seeing a disaster until 1921. Didn't make front page news in the papers when it happened because of the extreme remoteness in the region of Siberia. Also at play was the secretive, unsettled nature of Russia at the time, which of course only heightened the many conspiracy theories surrounding it today, taken from an article, The Tungsten Explosion of 1908 on 30th June 1908, over 100 years ago, more than that. A huge explosion destroyed 1,000 miles of a very remote, sparsely inhabited region of central Siberia. The exact date of the event is very uncertain because nobody from outside reached the region until 1927. And there is an 11-day difference between the Julian calendar, then used by the Russians, and the Gregorian calendar, which supplanted the Julian calendar. In 1582, Pope Gregory massacred the calendar by taking out 11 days in the month of October, and the Russians did not convert to the Gregorian calendar until after 1917 Russian Revolution. The area of the blast was extremely remote, but the devastation was immense. An estimated 80 million trees were flattened, and the whole herds of deer were wiped out. Magnitude of the blast was 1,000 times greater than the nuclear bomb dropped on Hiroshima, and its impact was felt as far afield as Great Britain. Had it occurred just minutes later, it would have destroyed the whole of St. Petersburg and killed millions of people. On the 7th of June, around 9 a.m. in the morning, we observed an unusual natural occurrence in the north. Karazinki village in the peasants saw the northwest, high above the horizon, some strangely bright, impossible to look at, bluish-white heavenly body, which for about 10 minutes moved downwards. The body appeared as a pipe, a cylinder. The sky was cloudless, only a small dark cloud was observed in the general direction of the bright body. It was hot and dry as the body neared the ground. The bright body seemed to smudge and then turned into a giant billow of black smoke, and a loud knocking, not thunder, was heard, as if large stones were falling or artillery was fired. All buildings shook at the same time. The cloud began emitting flames of uncertain shapes. All villagers were stricken with panic and took to the streets. Women cried, thinking it was the end of the world. Wikipedia. One of the alternative theories about tungsten involves around pioneer inventor Nikola Tesla, scientific genius credited with several important innovations in electricity, magnetism, and radio. For many years, he explored the ideas of wireless transmission of electricity. In 1901, he began construction of a 57-meter high wide cliff tower in New York, ostensibly for telegraphy. He used the tower for further his experiments into the transmission of electricity. But in 1906, his chief financial backer, J.P. Morgan, grew dissatisfied with Tesla's experiments and withdrew funding. Tesla's plans were in ruin. He became desperate and, according to bibliographers, suffered a nervous breakdown. Knowing what we know of Wardcliffe, we know that by 1908 the tower was supposed to be under optimal operating conditions, meaning that Tesla had put from 1901 to 1908 to work and tweak on his already finished model. So this has to lead many to speculate that the tungsten explosion wasn't caused by a rock from space, but rather Tesla's tower, since Long Island, New York, sort of lines up with the tungsten geographically speaking. We know that Tesla was far more proficient with electricity and its application than Marconi or Edison, so it takes no big leap in imagination to paint an electrifying picture of the tower at Wardenclyffe, buzzing with energy, ready to send a massive resonating volt of raw energy across the globe via its insulating mantle. A volt so powerfully charged that it burst from the earth itself, shining brilliantly into space, blasting away the dirt, rocks, trees, anything else that happened to be rooted or standing in its path, even tungsten itself. The Electrical Engineer, London, December 24th, 1909, page 893. Nikola Tesla's new wireless. Mr. Nikola Tesla has announced that the results of experiments conducted at Shoreham, Long Island, he has perfected a new system of wireless telegraphy and telephony, which the principles of transmission are a direct opposite of the Hertzian wave transmission. In the latter, he says the transmission is effectively by rays akin to light, which pass through the air and cannot be transmitted through the ground, while the former Hertz waves are practically suppressed and the entire energy of the current is transmitted through the ground exactly as through a big wire. Mr. Tesla adds that his experiments in Colorado, it was shown that a very powerful current developed by the transmitter traversed the entire globe and returned to its origin in an interval of 84 100ths of a second, the journey of 24,000 miles being effected almost without loss of energy. April 1908, Mr. Tesla's vision. How the electrician's lamp of Aladdin may construct new worlds. To the editor of New York Times. From a report in your issue on March 11, which escaped my attention, I noticed that some remarks I made on the occasion referred to have been misunderstood. Allow me to make a correction. When I spoke of a future warfare, I meant that it should be conducted by direct application of electrical waves without the use of aerial engines or other implements of destruction. This means, as I pointed out, would be ideal, for not only would be energy of war require no effort for its maintenance of its potentiality, but it would even be productive in times of peace. This is not a dream. Even now, wireless power plants could be constructed by which any region of the globe might render uninhabitable without subjecting the population or other parts to serious danger or inconvenience. What I said in regard to the greatest achievement of the man of science, whose mind is bent upon the mastery of the physical universe, was nothing more than what I stated in one of my unpublished addresses, from which I quote, According to the adopted theory, every polynomial atom is different from the tenuous field, filling all space merely by spinning motion, as a whirl of water can be calm in a lake. By being set in movement, this fluid, the ether, becomes gross matter. Its movement arrested, the primary substance reverts to its normal state. It appears then possible for man, through harnessed energy of the medium and stable agencies for starting and stopping ether whirls, to cause a matter of form and disappear. At his command, almost without effort on his part, old worlds would vanish and new ones would spring into being. He could alter the size of the planet, control its seasons, adjust its distance from the sun, guide it on its eternal journey across the path he might choose throughout the depths of the universe. He could make planets collide and produce these stars, suns and stars, these heat and light. He could originate life from in all infinite forms, to cause at will birth and death of a matter which be man's greatest deed, which would give him the mastery of physical creation, make him fulfill his ultimate destiny. Nothing could be further from my thought than to call wireless telephone around the world the greatest achievement of humanity as reported. This is a feat which, however superfine, can be readily performed by any expert. I have myself constructed a plant for the very purpose. The wireless wonders are only seeming, not the results of exceptional skill, as popularly believed. The truth is, the electrician has been put in a possession of a veritable lamp of Aladdin. All he wants to do is rub it. Now, rub the lamp of Aladdin is no achievement. If you are desirous or hasting the accomplishment of still greater and further reaching wonders, you can do no better than by emphatically opposing any measure tending to interfere with free commercial exploitation of water power and the wireless art. So absolutely does human progress depend on the development of these smallest impediment, particularly through the legislative bodies of this country, may set back civilization and the course of peace for centuries. A meteorological observer in England recounted the night of 30th of June on July 1st. A strong orange-yellow light became visible in the north and northeast, causing an undue prolongation of twilight lasting to daybreak on the 1st of July. There was complete absence of scintillation or flickering, and no tendency for the formation of streamers or a luminous arch characteristic of a rural phenomenon. Twilight on both of these nights was prolonged to daybreak, and there was no real darkness. When Tesla used his high-powered transmitter as a directed energy weapon, he drastically altered the normal electrical condition of Earth. By making the electrical charge of the planet vibrate in tune with his transmitter, he was able to build up electric fields that affected and compassed, that caused the upper atmosphere to behave like a gas-filled lamp in his laboratory. He had turned the entire globe into a simple electrical component that he could control. Given Tesla's general pacific nature, it was hard to understand why he would carry out a test harmful to both animals and the people who herded the animals, even when he was in the grip of financial desperation. The answer is that he probably intended no harm, but was aiming for a public coup and literally missed his target. At the end of 1908, the whole world was following the daring attempt of Perry to reach the North Pole, which he claimed by the spring of 1909. If Tesla wanted the attention of the international press, few things would have been more impressive than a Perry expedition setting out in the world of a plasmatic explosion on the ice near the North Pole. Tesla then, if he could not be hailed as the master creator that he was, could be seen as a master of a mysterious new force of destruction. So this is probably where it was, death beam. Tesla's creative mind continued to spark new visions, even in his late life. On his 78th birthday, told New York Times that he'd come up with his most important invention, one that would cause armies of millions to drop dead in their tracks. The invention, a military weapon that would accelerate mercury particles at 48 times the speed of sound inside a vacuum chamber and shoot a high-velocity beam through the free air of such tremendous energy that it will bring down a fleet of 10,000 enemy airplanes at the distance of 250 miles. Although the press stabbed it as a death beam, Tesla believed it as a peace beam, that it would foil attacks by airplanes and invading armies and save lives by acting like an invisible Chinese wall only a million times more impenetrable. Tesla offered his particle beam weapon to numerous governments, including the United States, but only the country to show interest was the Soviet Union, which conducted a partial test in 1939. I think it was that thing that he was testing. So we know he'd done a lot of things, but he also did the thought camera. Tesla believed it could be possible to photograph thoughts. The inspiration came when he was doing experiments in 1893. Tesla told a newspaper reporter decades later, "I've been convinced that the definite image formed in the thought must, by reflect action, produce a corresponding image on the retina, which might possibly be read by a suitable apparatus." The inventor, convinced of reflecting an image on an artificial retina, taking a photograph and projecting the image on the screen. If this can be done successfully, then the objects imagined by a person would be clearly reflected on the screen as they are formed, he said, and in this way every thoughtful of the individual could be read. Our minds would then indeed would be like an open book. So he did the wireless energy. That tower got pulled down and his funding got taken because JP Morgan was trying to make money with the electricity and everything. The artificial tidal wave, think of Japan and the Boxing Day tsunami. The engineer and the physicist believed the power of science could be harnessed to prevent war. 1907, New York World reported on another of Tesla's military inventions in which wireless telegraphy would trigger the detonations of high explosions at sea and generate tidal waves so vast that they could capsize an entire army fleet. The newspaper reported that the artificial tidal wave would make natives as useless as the paper boats that the babies float in bathtubs, and foreshadowing later claims about the development of nuclear weapons. By its horrors hastened the day of universal peace. Electric-powered supersonic airship. From the time Tesla was a boy, he'd been fascinated with the idea of flight. Combining his knowledge of electrical and mechanical engineering, he began to think more about aviation after the failure of Wardenclyffe. In an article in July 1919 issue of Reconstruction magazine, Tesla discussed his work on developing a supersonic aircraft that would travel 8 miles above the surface of the Earth and generate speeds allowing passengers to travel between New York City and London in 3 hours. Tesla's concept called for the aircraft to be pulled by electricity transmitted wirelessly from power plants on the ground, eliminating the need for aircraft to carry fuel. Power supply is virtually unlimited, as any number of power plants can be operated together, supplying energy to airships just as trains running on tracks are now supplied with electrical energy through rails or wires, Tesla said in the article. Stranger's got Reconstruction magazine. So the Tunguska event was a massive 12 megaton explosion that occurred in Russia on the morning of June 30th, 1908. The explosion over a sparsely populated eastern Siberia taiga flattened an estimated 80 million trees over 2,150 kilometers square of forest. Eyewitness reports suggest at least 3 people may have died in the event. The explosion is generally attributed to a meteor airburst. The atmospheric explosion of a stony meteoroid about 50 to 60 meters, 160 to 200 feet in size. The meteoroid approached from the east-southeast and likely with a relatively high speed of about 27 kilometers a second. It's classified as an impact event even though no impact crater has ever been found. The object is thought to have disintegrated at altitude of 5 to 10 kilometers rather than have hit the surface of Earth. The event is the largest impact event on Earth in recorded history, though much larger impacts have occurred in prehistoric times. An explosion of this magnitude will be capable of destroying a large metropolitan area. It's been mentioned numerous times in popular culture. It's also inspired world discussion on asteroid impact avoidance. So they observed a bluish light, nearly as bright as the sun, moving across the sky and leaving a thin trail. Closer to the horizon there was a flash, producing a bright billowing cloud, followed by a pillar of fire that cast a red light on the landscape. The pillar split in two and faded, turning to black. About 10 minutes later there was a sound similar to the artillery fire. Eyewitness closer to the explosion reported that the source of the sound moved from the east to the north of them. The sounds were accompanied by a shock wave that knocked people off their feet and broke windows hundreds of kilometers away. The explosion registered at seismic stations across Eurasia, and airwaves from the blast were detected in Germany, Denmark, Croatia, and United Kingdom. It's even far away as Batavia, which is in India, Dutch East Indies, Washington, D.C. It's estimated that in some places the resulting shock wave was equivalent to an earthquake measuring 5.0 on the Richter scale. Over the next few days, night skies in Asia, Europe were aglow. There was contemporaneous reports of brightly lit photographs being successfully taken at midnight without the aid of flash bulbs in Sweden and Scotland. It's been theorized that this sustained glowing effect was due to light passing through high-altitude ice particles that had formed at extensively low temperatures as a result of the explosion. A phenomenon that decades later was reproduced by space shuttles in the United States. The Smithsonian Physical Observatory program at the Mount Wilson Observatory in California observed a months-long decrease in atmospheric transparency consistent with an increase in suspended dust particles. Through the region in Siberia in which the explosion occurred was very sparsely populated in 1908. There are accounts from event eyewitnesses who were in the surrounding area at the time. Regional newspapers reported the event shortly after it occurred. According to the testimony of S. Semenov, as recorded by Russian mineralogist Leonard Kurlik's expedition in 1930. At breakfast time, I was sitting by the house at veranda, trading post approximately 65 kilometers south of the explosion facing north. I suddenly saw in that direction north over Aunque's Tunguska road. The sky split in two and a fire appeared high and wide over the forest. The split in the sky grew larger and the entire northern side was covered with fire. At that moment I became so hot I couldn't bear it as my shirt was on fire. From the northern side where the fire was come strong heat. I wanted to tear off my shirt and throw it down. But then the sky shut closed and a strong thump sounded and I was thrown a few meters. I lost my senses for a moment, but then my wife ran out and led me to the house. After such noise came as if rocks were falling or cannons were firing. The earth shook, and when I was on the ground I pressed my head down, fearing rocks would smash it. When the sky opened up, hot wind raced between the houses like from cannons, which left traces in the ground like pathways, and it damaged some crops. Later we saw that many windows were shattered, and in the barn, part of the iron rocks snapped. Testimony of another bloke. So we had a hut by the river, and my brother Chekin, we were sleeping. Suddenly we both woke up at the same time. Somebody shoved us. We heard whistling and a strong wind. He said, "Can you hear all those birds flying overhead?" We were both in a hut. Couldn't see what was going on outside. Suddenly I got shoved again. This time it was so hard I fell into the fire. I got scared. Chekin got scared too. We started crying out for father, mother, brother. No one answered. There was a noise beyond the hut. We could hear trees falling. Chekin and I got out of our sleeping bags and wanted to run out, but the thunder struck. This was the first thunder. The earth began to move and rock. The wind hit our hut and knocked it over. My body was pushed down by sticks, but my head was in the clear. Then I saw a wonder. Trees were falling. The branches were on fire, and it became mighty bright. How can I say this? As if there was the second sun. My eyes were hurting. I even closed them. It was like what the Russians call lightning, and immediately there was a loud thunderclap. This was the second thunder. The morning was sunny. There was no clouds. Our sun was shining brightly as usual, and all of a sudden there came a second one. Karkin and I had some difficulty getting out from under the remains of our hut. Then we saw that above, in a different place, there was another flash and a loud thunder come. This was the third thunderstrike. Wind came again, knocked us off our feet, struck the fallen trees. We looked at our fallen trees and watched the tree tops get snatched off, watched the fires. Suddenly, Chuckin yelled, "Look out," and pointed with his hand. I looked there and saw another flash, and it made another thunder. But the noise was less than before. This was the fourth strike, like normal thunder. Well, now I remember well, there was also one more thunder strike, but it was small, somewhere far away, where the sun goes to sleep. On the morning of 17th of June, around 9 a.m., we observed an unusual natural occurrence in the village north of Krinskiet. Sorry, I can't say that name. The peasants saw to the northwest, rather high above the horizon, some strangely bright, impossible to look at, bluish-white heavenly body, which for about 10 minutes moved downwards. The body appeared as a pipe, i.e. a cylinder. The sky was cloudless, only a small dark cloud was observed in the general direction of the bright sky. It was hot and dry, and as the body neared the ground of forest, the bright body seemed to smudge, and that turned into a giant billow of black smoke, and a loud knocking, not thunder, was heard as if large stones were falling or artillery was fired. The buildings shook. At the same time, the cloud began emitting flames of uncertain shapes. All the villagers were stricken with panic and took to the streets. Women cried, thinking it was the end of the world. The author of these lines was meantime in the forest about 6.4 kilometers north of Krenskiet, and headed to the northeast some kind of artillery barrage that repeated in intervals of 15 minutes at least 10 times. A few buildings in the walls facing northeast window got glass shock. When the meteorite fell, strong tremors in the ground were observed. Two strong explosions were heard, as if large caliber artillery. 17th, an unusual atmospheric event was observed at 7:43. The noise akin to a strong wind was heard. Immediately afterwards, a horrific thump sound, followed by an earthquake that literally shook the buildings as if they were hit by a large log or heavy rock. The first thump was followed by a second and then a third. Then the interval between the first and the third thumps was accompanied by an unusual underground rattle, similar to a railway upon which dozens of trains are travelling at the same time. Afterwards, for 5 to 6 minutes, an exact, unusual likeness of artillery fire was heard, 50, 60 salvos in short, equal intervals, which progressively got weaker. After 1.5 to 2 minutes after, the barrage of 6 small thumps were heard, like cannon firing, but individual, loud, and accompanied by tremors. The sky at the first sight appeared to be clear. There was no wind, no clouds. Upon closer inspection to the north, where most of the thumps were heard, a kind of ashen cloud was seen near the horizon, which kept getting smaller and more transparent, possibly around 2 to 3 p.m. completely disappeared. So since the 1908 event, there has been an estimated 1,000 scholarly papers, most in Russian, published about the Tunguska explosion, owing to the remoteness of the site and limited instrumentations available at the time of the event. Modern scientific interpretations of this cause and magnitude have relied chiefly on the damage assessments and geological studies conducted many years after the event. Estimates of its energy have ranged from 3 to 30 megatons of TNT. It was not until more than a decade after the event that any scientific analysis in the region took place, in part due to the isolation of the area and significant political upheaval affecting Russia in the 1910s. In 1921, Russian mineralogist Leonid Kulik led a team to the basin to conduct a survey for the Soviet Academy of Sciences. Although they never visited the central Bos area, the many local accounts of the event led Clark to believe the explosion had been caused by a giant meteorite impact. Upon returning, he persuaded the Soviet government to fund an expedition to the suspected impact zone based on the prospect of salvaging metric iron. He led the scientific expedition to the Tunguska blast site in 1927. He hired a local even key hunters to guide his team to the center of the blast area, where they expected to find an impact crater. To their surprise, there was no crater to be found at ground zero. Instead, they found a zone roughly 8 kilometers across, where the trees were scorched and devoid of branch, but still standing upright. Trees more distant from the center have been partially scorched and knocked down in the direction away from the center, creating a large radial pattern of downed trees. In the 60s, it was established that the zone was leveled forest occupation area of 2,150 kilometers squared, its shape resembling a giant spread eagle butterfly with a wingspan of 70 kilometers and a body length of 55 kilometers. Upon closer inspection, Kulik located holes that erroneously concluded were meteorite holes. He did not have the means at the time to evacuate the holes. During the following 10 years, there were 3 more expeditions to the area. He found several dozen of the little pothole bogs, each 10 to 50 meters in diameter, that he thought might have been meteorite craters. After a laborious exercise in draining one of these pothole bogs, he found an old tree stump at the bottom, ruling out the possibility that it was a crater. In 1938, he arranged for aerial photography to survey the area, covering the central part of the level forest. The original negatives of the aerial photographs were burned in 1975 by order of then chairman of the Committee on Meteorites, as part of an initiative to dispose of flammable nitrate film. Positive prints were preserved for further study in the Russian city of Tomsk. Expeditions sent to the area in the 1950s and 60s found microscopic sisslite and magnolite spheres in siftings of the soil. Similar spheres were predicted to exist in the felled trees, although they could not be detected by contemporary means. Later expeditions did identify such spheres in the resin of trees. Chemical analysis showed that the spheres contain high proportions of nickel relative to iron also found in meteorites, leading to the conclusion that they were of extraterrestrial origin. The concentration of the spheres in different regions of the soils also found to be consistent with the expected distribution of debris from the meteoroid air blast. Later studies of the spheres found unusual ratios of numerous other metals relative to the surrounding environment, which was taken for further evidence of their extraterrestrial origin. Chemical analysis of the peat bogs from several areas also revealed numerous anomalies considered to consistent with the impact event. The isotopic signatures of carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen at the layer of the bogs corresponding to 1908 were found to be consistent with the isotopic ratios measured in the adjacent layers, and this abnormality was not found in the bogs located outside the area. The region of the bogs showing these anomalous signatures also contains an unusually high proportion of iridium, similar to the iridium layer found in the Cretaceous-Paleo boundary. These unusual portions are believed to be results from debris from the falling body that dispersed in logs. The nitrogen is believed to have been deposited from the acid rain, a suspected fallout from the explosion. However, other scientists disagree. Some papers report that hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen isotopic composers with signatures similar to those of CiCm carbonyl chlorides were found in the tungsten peat layers dating from the TE, and the iridium anomalies were also observed in 1988-2004. Measurements performed in other laboratories have not confirmed these results. Researcher John, I can't say his name, sorry, last name, has suggested that the boulder found at the event site known as John Stone is a remnant of the meteorite, but oxygen isotopes analysis of the quartzite suggests that its hydrothermal origin, possibly related to Permian-Triassic Siberian traps magnetism. 2013, Tima researchers published results of an analysis of micro samples from peat bog near the center of the affected area, which show fragments that may be of extraterrestrial origin. The leading scientific expedition for the explosion in the air blast of an asteroid 6 to 10 kilometers above Earth's surface. Meteoroids enter Earth's atmosphere from outer space every day, traveling at the speed of 11 kilometers per second. The heat generated by compression of air in front of the body, around pressure as it travels through the atmosphere, is immense, and most meteoroids burn up or explode before they reach the ground. Early estimates the energy of the tungsten air blast ranged from 10 to 15 megatons of TNT to 30 megatons of TNT, depending on the exact height of the burst as estimated when the scaling laws from the effects of nuclear weapons are employed. More recent calculations that include the effect of the object's momentum find that more energy was focused downward than would be the cause. From nuclear explosion, estimated that the airburst had an energy range from 3 to 5 megatons. The 15 megaton estimate represents an energy of 1,000 times greater than that of Hiroshima blast, and roughly equal to the United States Castle Bravo nuclear test in 1954, which measured 15.2 megaton, and one-third of the Soviet Union's Tsar bomb test in 1961. A 2019 paper suggests that the explosive power of the tungsten event may have been around 20 to 30 megatons. Since the second half of the 20th century, close monitoring of the Earth's atmosphere through infrasound and satellite observation has shown that asteroid airbursts with energies comparable to those in nuclear weapons routinely occur although tungsten-sized events on the order of 5 to 15 megatons are much rarer. Eugene Shoemaker estimated that 20 kiloton events occur annually and that tungsten-sized events occur about once every 300 years. More recent estimates place tungsten-sized events at about 1 every 1,000 years, 5 kiloton air blasts averaging about once per year. Most of these airbursts are thought to have been caused by asteroid impacts as opposed to mechanically weaker cometary materials. based on their typical penetration depths into the Earth's atmosphere. The largest asteroid airburst to be observed with modern instrument was 500 kiloton Cheblemes meteor in 2013, which shattered windows and produced meteorites. In 2020, a group of Russian scientists used a range of computer models to calculate the passage of the asteroids with diameters of 200 150 meters at oblique angles across the Earth's atmosphere. They used a range of assumptions about the object's composition, as if it was made of iron, rock, or ice. The model, which closely matched the observed event, was an iron asteroid up 200 meters in diameter, traveling at about 11.2 kilometers per second, which glanced off the Earth's atmosphere and returned into solar orbit. Oh, so like a rock on the water, it hit it and bounced. Yeah, sure. The explosion's effect on the trees near the hypocenter of the explosion was similar to the effects of the conventional Operation Blowdown. These effects are caused by a blast wave produced by large airburst explosions. The trees directly below the explosion are stripped as the blast waves moves vertically downward but remain standing upright, while trees further away are knocked over because the blast wave is traveling closer to the horizon when it reaches them. Soviet experiments performed in the mid-1960s with model forests made of matches on wire stakes and small explosive charges slid downward on the wires produced a butterfly-shaped blast pattern similar to the pattern found in the Tunguska site. The experiment suggested that the object had approached the angle of roughly 30 degrees from the ground and 115 degrees from the north and exploded mid-air. Asteroid or comet. 1930s, the British astronomer F.J.W. Whipple suggested that the tungsten body was a small comet, a comet composed of dust and volatiles such as water, ice, frozen gases, and could have been completely vaporized by the impact with the Earth's atmosphere, leaving no obvious traces. The comet hypothesis was further supported by glowing skies or sky glows or bright nights, absorbed across Eurasia for several evenings after the impact, which are probably explained by dust and ice that have been dispersed from the comet's tail across the atmosphere. The cometary hypothesis gained general acceptance among Soviet tungsten investigators in the 1960s. In 1978, Slovak astronomer, suggested that the body was a fragment of comet Encke. This is a periodic comet with an extremely short period of just over 3 years that stays entirely with the orbit of Jupiter. It is also responsible for the Beta Taurids, an annual meteor shower with a maximum activity around 28 to 29 June. The tungsten event collided with the peak activity of that shower, and that the approximate trajectory of the tungsten object is consistent with what would be expected from a fragment comet Encke. It is now known that the bodies of this kind explode at frequent intervals, tens to hundreds of kilometers above the ground. Military satellites have been observing these explosions for decades. During 2019, astronomers searched for the hypothesized asteroids 100 meters in diameter from the Taurid swarms between 5th of 11th July, 21st of July, 10th of August. As February 2020, there have been no reports of discoveries of any such objects. In 1983, astronomer published a paper criticizing the comet hypothesis. He pointed out that a body composed of cometary material traveling through the atmosphere along such a shallow trajectory ought to have disintegrated, whereas the tungsten body apparently remained intact into the lower atmosphere. He also argued the evidence pointed to a dense rocky object, probably an asteroid at origin. This hypothesis further boosted in 2001 when Fenella Frascati, released a study calculating the possibilities based on an orbiting model extracted from the atmospheric trajectories of the tungsten event. They concluded, with a probability of 83%, that the object moved on an asteroidal path originating from the asteroid belt rather than on a cometary one, probability of 17%. Proponents of the comet hypothesis have suggested that the object was a distinct comet with a stony mantle that allowed it to penetrate the atmosphere. The chief difficulty in asteroid hypothesis is that the stony object should have produced a large crater when it struck the ground, but no such crater has been found. It has been hypothesized that the passage of the asteroid through the atmosphere caused pressures and the temperatures to build up to the point where the asteroid abruptly disintegrated in a huge explosion. The destruction would have been so complete that no remains of substantial size survived, and the material scattered into the atmosphere. During the explosion, it would have caused the sky glows. Models published in 1993 suggest that the stony body would have been about 60 meters, 200 feet across, with physical properties somewhere between the ordinary chondrite and carbonous chondrite. Typically, substance. This tends to be dissolved with water rather quickly, unless it's frozen. Christopher Schreiber and others have proposed a process whereby a stony meteorite could have exhibited the behavior of the tungsten impactor. Their models show that when the forces opposing a body's descent becomes greater than the cohesive force holding it together, it blows apart, releasing nearly all of its energy at once. This results in no crater. The damage distributed over a fairly wide radius, and all the damage resulting from thermal energy released in its blast. Three-dimensional numerical modelling of the tungsten impact done in 2008 supports the comet hypothesis. According to their results, the comet matter dispersed in the atmosphere while the destruction of the forest was caused by a shock wave. During the 90s, Italian researchers, coordinated by the physicist from the University of Bologna, extracted resin from the core of the trees in the area impacted to examine trapped particles that were present during the 1908 event. They found high levels of material commonly found in rocky asteroids and rarely found in comets. In 2009, contended that the impact was caused by a comet because of the sightings of the non-colloidal clouds. Following the impact, a phenomenon caused by massive amounts of water vapor in the upper atmosphere, they compared the noculant cloud phenomenon to the exhaust plume of NASA's Endeavour space shuttle. A team of Russian researchers led by Edward Dobrowski in 2009 have suggested that the near-Earth asteroid 2005 NB56 may be a possible candidate for the parent body of the tungsten object, as the asteroid made a close orbit approach 27 lunar days from Earth on the 27th of June 1908, 3 days before the tungsten impact. The team suggests that the 2005 NB56 orbit likely fits the modelled orbit of the tungsten event. Even with the effects of weak non-gravitational forces, in 2013, analysis of fragments of the tungsten site by a joint US-European team was consistent with an iron meteorite. In February 2013, the Tunguska event provided ample data for scientists to create new models of the tungsten event. Researchers used data from both tungsten and Tunguska to perform a statistical study over 50 million combinations of bolide and entry properties that could produce the tungsten scale damage where breaking apart or exploding similar altitudes. Some models focused on combinations of properties which created scenarios with similar effects to the tree fall pattern, as well as the atmospheric and seismic pressure waves of tungsten. 4 different computer models were produced similar results. They concluded that the likeliest candidate for the tungsten impactor was a stony body between 50 to 80 meters in diameter, emptying the atmosphere at roughly 55,000 kilometers an hour, exploding at 10 to 14 kilometers in altitude, and releasing explosive energy equivalent between 10 and 30 megatons. This is similar to the blast energy equivalent of the 1980 volcanic eruption of Mount St. Helena. The researchers also concluded impacts of this size hit the Earth only on an average interval scale of millennia. So yeah, they've done research to cover it. So they're just going on about the same thing. They can't find anything. Anything I think it is it was Tesla. A similar air burst occurred over a populated area on the 15th of February 2013. Chelyabinsk in Ural district of Russia. Exploding meteorite was detected to have been an asteroid that measured 17 to 20 meters across. It had an estimated initial mass of 11,000 tons, exploded with an energy release of approximately 500 kilotons. Some of the trees. And see on a flat Earth map, Tesla, like New York, wherever he was, it'd be just up here, wouldn't it? Be up on the flat map. So the photos weren't taken for over a decade later. 80 million trees flattened. One day in 1908, an explosion 1,000 times greater than that of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima erupted in the remote Siberian wilderness, shattering the calm of the icy landscapes, flattened 80 million trees. What exactly caused the devastating blast is still in question today. 30th of June 1908 at 7:17 at local time, the few inhabitants of the remote Siberian region of awoke to see a column of blue light nearly as bright as the sun moving across the sky. They then heard a devastating boom. Shock waves travelled across the area, shattering windows and knocking people flat on their feet. A peasant living in the area described the event, saying, over Aunque's Tunguska road, the sky split in two and fire appeared high and wide over the forest. The split grew in the sky grew larger, and the entire northern side was covered in fire. At that moment, it became so hot, I couldn't bear it. So shit was on fire from the northern side where the fire was. Come strong heat. I wanted to turn my shit off and throw it down, but then the sky shut closed. Yeah, that's what I was reading before. They found reindeers charred. Nothing remained. Everything was burned up, melted to pieces, clothes, utensils, reindeer, everything. The owners of two gold mines called each area called one another on the telephones to accuse each other of illegally dynamiting the area. Due to the remote nature of the region, there were only 2 reported casualties of an explosion. From the outset of the event, researchers quickly concluded the blast was an airburst. Yeah, don't think so. In that, I was trying to find the photo. Tesla did an experiment with his death ray, and it's similar photos to this one. Trying to find it. I think this is sort of what they were describing with the blue and the colours. This was Norway. It's happened a few times. Apparently they say it's rockets, but I don't know. I think they might be directing energy up to the dome, and then that energy is bouncing off the dome, and then it comes back. Yeah. I think that's what it is. It gets really big, and then it just creates all these weird colours and patterns. Tesla's death ray. Did Tesla experiment cause the Tunguska blast? So we know about all this. Just read most of that. Well, it quickly became apparent something monotonous had happened at Tunguska. The area of the blast remained inaccessible until the expedition in 1927. 27 investigation began nearly a century of debate about what caused the blast, with explanations ranging from comets and meteors to explosions of natural gas and even mini black holes. One of the alternative theories about Tunguska revolves around the pioneering inventor Nikola Tesla. Tesla was a scientific genius credited with several important innovations in electricity, magnetism, and radio. For many years, he explored ideas with wireless transmission of electricity. In 1901, he began construction of a 57-metre-high Wardenclyffe Tower in New York, ostensibly for telegraph. He used the tower to further his experiments into transmission of electricity. But by 1906, his chief financial backer, J.P. Morgan, grew dissatisfied with the Tesla experiments and withdrew the funding. Tesla's plans were in ruin. He became desperate and, according to biographers, suffered a nervous breakdown. Apparently, what happened was Morgan was looking into what he was doing, and Tesla said the experiment was radio, that it wasn't electricity. And when he found out that he was doing electricity, he went nuts and shut it down. It had been suggested that Tesla tried to salvage his work at Wardenclyffe and retrieve his fortunes by staging an audacious publicity stunt. Tesla had become convinced his wireless electricity transmitter could be used as a weapon, able to transmit electrical waves through the earth of such intensity it could be destroyed at a target hundreds of miles away. Like the rest of America, Tesla was gripped by the explosive admiral Robert Peary in his assault on the North Pole. At the time of the Tunguska blast in 1908, Peary was camped out on Ellesmere Island in preparation for his bid to reach the pole. Tesla had made cryptic remarks about contacting Peary somehow, and had instructed him to watch the tundra for signals. What a better way for Tesla to demonstrate the awesome power of his device to the world than to fire a bolt of energy towards Ellesmere and rip up some ice or cause a light show? Advocates for this theory that Tesla was behind the Tunguska blast claims his publicly publicity stunt went drastically wrong. His concentrated wave of electricity overshooting its target and instead causing the explosion at Tunguska. Could Tesla have been really responsible for the Tunguska blast? Yeah. Claims. Number 1. The idea of death rays was very prevalent around the time of the Tunguska. Several inventors, notably Harry Grindle Mathers in England, claimed to have invented such a weapon. In 1907, there was much speculation in the press about the explosion that destroyed the French battleship Aina in March was caused by some kind of wireless energy wave, with Tesla's name even mentioned in connection with the disaster. I'll have to look that one up. So that's that one there. It's just a laser. Tesla himself gave rise to much of the speculation by repeatedly claiming his electricity transmission device could be used as a directed energy weapon. Writing to Liberty magazine, he explained, "My inventions requires a large plant, but once it is established, it will be possible to destroy anything, men or machines approaching within a radius of 200 miles. Is that why they built nuclear power plants everywhere? To power their directed energy weapons? I mean, nuclear would be one way they could get their power. As to projecting wave energy into any particular region of the globe, this can be done by my devices. The spot at which the desired effect is to be produced can be calculated very closely, assuming the accepted terrestrial measurements to be correct. Once it's established, it will be possible to destroy anything, men, machines approaching within a radius of 200 miles. Just 2 months before the Tunguska, he wrote tellingly, "This is not a dream. Even now, wireless power plants could be constructed by which any region of the globe might be rendered uninhabited without subjecting the populace to other parts of serious danger and inconvenience." Did Tesla beset by financial problems and desperate for his Weidencliff plant to succeed, use it for precisely the purpose he described to the New York Times? Number 2. Doubts over the meteor theory. Although the prevailing consensus that the cause of the Tunguska blast is the explosion of a comet or meteorite in the atmosphere above the area, there are numerous reasons to doubt this. Several eyewitness reports describe the unusual and prolonged lights to be in the sky, both before and for days after the impact, quite unlike those to be expected from a meteorite or a comet. Even as far afield as England, the sky was lit up for days afterwards. Widespread reports of nights turning into day flooded into newspaper, while one correspondent recounted how he was able to read a book illuminated purely by the night sky. Tesla specifically cited the ability of Weidencliff to light up the atmosphere on several occasions. "I have planned many details of the plant which would be simply sufficient to eliminate the entire ocean so that such a disaster as at the Titanic would not be repeated." See, they didn't want him doing this because the oil barons and all that, they wouldn't make their money. That would go against their plans. Many of the eyewitnesses also described earth shaking even before the explosion again. Tesla described how his device could shake the ground, even boasting on one occasion that he could shake the Empire Building to its foundations. The meteorite theory is also undetermined by the fact that no blast crater or trace or any meteorite has ever been found despite exhaustive searches. If, however, Tesla really could transmit a directed energy beam throughout the ground, it would leave no traces or crater. 3. The geographical alignment. It has been pointed out that you draw a line between Tesla's Weidencliff Tower and Tunguska passes through the location of the supposed target of his energy beam, Ellesmere Island. Whilst the correlation is inexact, it's an interesting coincidence. Did Tesla, intending to shake up the ice at Ellesmere, overshoot his target and accidentally cause the devastation on Tunguska? Evidence against pseudoscience. The concept that electricity could be wirelessly transmitted over long distances is now discounted as pseudoscience by most scientists, whereas Tesla did successfully demonstrate short-range transmission of electricity. He was never able to demonstrate any ability to transmit over great distances. Bull. Tesla, always desperate for an audience for his inventions, would have widely advertised the technology if he had really perfected it, as he claimed. Tesla was a very eccentric individual. He had visions, claimed to receive signals from extraterrestrials, and somewhat oddly was in love with a pigeon. He was also an introvert self-publicist notorious for making up far-fetched and exaggerated claims which he could not back up. For example, He once claimed he could fire an energy beam at the moon and distribute its surface. Well, they've proved that. They fire beams onto the moon quite often. They do it daily. They got sensors up there. They fire a green laser at it. But 2 death rays. There have been many attempts to produce this kind of death ray proposed by Tesla over the years, but no such weapon has ever been produced despite obvious military application. What a load of shit. What a load of shit. They're coming out now with the energy weapons. The vast amount of energy Tesla's death ray would require to operate as he boasted would appear to rule it out as any kind of viable device. It is estimated that to produce the estimated 10 megaton blast recorded at Tunguska, Wardenclyffe would need to transmit billions of watts worth of power. Thousands of times more than New York power grid he relied on was capable of producing. Didn't Nikola's experiment cause a blast? Yes, did. So yeah, that's just one I found that agrees with me. Now, these direct energy weapons are very real. They do exist. I'll leave these links in the description for you. Yeah, they've got them on Humvees. They've got them on the vehicles here now too, in Australia. And they point a beam at you and you run. Yeah, these things. They got a thing on it like that. See, that's it there. That's what I think. Here's another article from Russia that mentions Tesla. Others believe that the inventor Tesla was responsible for the explosion in the sky. This version persists that from his American laboratory he launched a powerful energetic shot towards the region of Alaska in order to test a new invention, but he missed. According to his theory, his experiment failed, and horrific by the destructive results, he chose to stay silent about the invention. About 30% of the researchers believed that it was a meteorite. The same amount think that it was a comet. 40% support the range of diverse hypotheses. Just want to throw something out there that's something different. Electric car being charged in the 1890s USA. I have seen heaps of photos and videos about people sharing images of old cars, trucks, bikes, all being electric. Charge stations like this everywhere. End of the 19th century, electric cars were at peak of popularity alongside horse and steam-based transport. Electric cars were the most common way to get around. Electric charging stations for electric cars actually outnumbered gas pumps and their petroleum-based cousins. So I just wanted to share that one quickly. And see, history is just a lie, because they say Marie Claire and her husband invented X-rays, but in 1895 a German scientist discovered a mysterious energy that called X-rays. You notice when he placed photographic film between his hand and the LED screen, it created an image of the bones. Tesla knew a bit about it. 1895 fire destroyed his lab. So it says here that he wrote to Woodrow Wilson. Where are the letters then? I'm sure they keep all that stuff. Can't they release that stuff? It started when Tesla proclaimed to everyone that he had a weapon, probably known as death ray, able to send electric magnetic ray across hundreds of kilometers to destroy a great part of the earth, hinting that the weapon it could break the earth if it were an apple. He sent a letter to Woodrow Wilson, the American president at the time, in which he explained the operation of his machine and claimed to have proof of its proper functioning. I'm still trying to find the picture, but there's a picture where he did a test and it blew it up exactly like this. I'll just try to find it. He recounted in his letter that in 1908, while his friend Robert Peary tried to reach the North Pole, he sent one of his death rays to the west of where his friend was. And a few days before, sent him a telegram that essentially notified Peary that he would send a bolt of lightning across close to where Peary was, and Peary would tell him how everything had gone. His intention was that his friend and his crew he was leading would observe the intense luminosity at dusk. However, nothing happened. Neither Peary nor his crew saw anything. The curious thing is, the same day that Peary theoretically arrived at the North Pole, about 16,000 kilometers away, the tungsten 1908 explosion occurred. Russian scientists agree with the statement that Tesla could have done with his famous metal Vanderklaff that contained his lab, which was in operation in 1908. 3 months before the explosion, Tesla sent his associate to the Washington Library of Congress to acquire maps of Siberia, precisely of the tungsten area. Data on this exists in the Washington Library that regularly updates every request and search, explains Abmerick. As President Wilson ignored him, there were indications that he sent the same letter to other world leaders who also stopped taking the Tesla invention seriously. To continue with the theory, we must remember that in the decade where there were several explosions of a lesser severity and intensity in different parts of the Earth, which some Dracosis people attributed to the death ray, based on Tesla's comment on how powerful it was. So Tesla was here, and that's where it went, and Perry was up here. That's what I mean. When you look at the map, it just makes sense. Like, how can it not? You just look at it, you're like, yeah, on that trajectory. It seems extremely reckless, but Tesla's experiment may have been the act of frustration and desperate man. Tesla was a genius who never quite got the recognition he deserved. The financial backing of his work was drying up. He had a big chip on his shoulder from past failures, and this one may have put him over the edge. Was the tungsten 1908 explosion Tesla's test of the system of wireless energy transfer, and with the testimony of Admiral Perry, whom he hopefully did not blow up during the experiment, Tesla could have proven his tower worth the investment, reclaimed the admiration of his benefactors, and continued his work. It might sound like an accident if you consider the Wardenclyffe as a mere communication system, but there is another more chilling scenario. There are those who claim there was a third use for Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, to function as a death ray. Some say that the Wardenclyffe Tower was an operational superweapon and held the power to create massive amounts of destruction. With the alleged ability to transmit aimed blasts of energy, it's not a far stretch. In fact, Tesla came to be working on a super weapon from 1900s until the time of his death. According to him, he did design and test such a device later in his career, a charged particle beam projector called Teleforce. Tesla said his transmitter could produce 100 million volts of pressure and currents of up to 1,000 amperes, with their experimental power levels of 1 billion or tens of billions of watts. If that amount of power was released in an incomparably small interval of time, the energy would be equal to the explosion of millions of tons of TNT. That is a multi-megaton explosion. Such a transmitter would be capable of projecting the force of a nuclear warhead by radio. Any location in the world could be vaporized at the speed of light. With this type of apocalyptic discourse that we today we would describe as a terrorist, the governments and those who financed it backed out in fear of what he was capable of. Another endorsement that his experiments were very real is that he managed to create energy of 4 million volts, with the intention of lighting all the lamps in a 40k around. The pity is, although he succeeded, his laboratory exploded. If Tesla was indeed behind the tungsten event, it would have been an error. It might also explain further why his Wardenclyffe Tower was destroyed in 1917, and why he gave little comment about that. If this were true, it would have been an unintentional mistake, and must have caused a huge blow to him. Even stranger ideas for the explosion. Wilder theories have been bandied about over the years regarding what caused it, including a UFO crash, struck by the similarity of tungsten and Hiroshima decades later. A science fiction writer named Alexandra Kravask wrote a story in which the tungsten blast was the exploding nuclear power plant of a spaceship from Mars. A few Russian scientists took up the cause and claimed to find various bits of evidence never substantiated for a civilized alien expedition. Yeah, okay. Nikola Tesla death ray, a man who pioneered radio and modern alternating current power, was often seen as a mad scientist. One story alleges he testified the death ray on the evening of June 30, 1908, and once he found out about the tungsten event, he dismantled the weapon, deeming it too dangerous to remain in existence. Trying to find that photo, but yeah, it just makes total sense when you look at it. I was just looking at this, right? This sort of setup here, how it's set up. Have a look at this one. I made a video a long time ago about this. This looks exactly like what they would probably do. Like that bit would be in the ground, because it sends it through the ground. I did make a video a long time ago about this. I'll leave the link in the description. This is all over Australia, this system. It's massive. And it uses the FM radio network as well to boost the bandwidth. So yeah, it just bounces off each one. This one's huge. All these. It's got little towers all the way along there. They're all towers there. It's got another upgrade going on. Another 10 years, like. So yeah, it's a pretty big system. Like, I did make a video ages ago about it. It's about an hour and a half. And it shows all the systems and the telescopes that work with it, and the ground-based radars show all of that. Should be another one over here. There should be another one here in South Australia, and then one there in the middle. And this is the one people go on about it with the satanic symbol in it. It's had a lot of things added to it. These are all towers. Every dot you see is a big tower. It's massive. There's a shadow. So it's coming out this way. Shadow there, it's massive. Yeah, it uses the FM radio network as well. Bounces off that. Should be another bit down here for it. More towers, yeah, there, and there's another bit down further as well. Down here near base. Yeah, and this is another part of it. So yeah, they all work in unison. So there's one there. I think there's about 7 or 8 of these places all over the country. There's another 2, Western Australia, South Australia. But I think that's what that death ray is that they call it. It's a directed energy weapon. Yeah, these are all the stations. Goes up into the ionosphere. It just sounds like with the microwave stuff that they're doing, it just sounds similar. Yeah, it covers the whole Australia, Asia. They've got the East Coast covered as well. But they just sound very similar. Very similar. Anyway, if you're still with me, I appreciate it. Yeah, I've been quiet, just spending time with family. But yeah, that just looks like that setup I just seen. So that's where that one's at. I've got heaps of videos. I just haven't had time to upload. I've done lots. As you can see, there's lots there. Then October. I just haven't had time to. I've done some editing. But yeah, I just haven't had time. Alright. So yeah, that was that one. It's been sitting in my head for a while about Tesla. And it's something, I don't know if it's him and he's done something around that time and it's just annihilated everything. That's what I'm thinking. It was one of Tesla's devices that's done this. So yeah, everyone in the chat, I just want to say thanks for hanging by and watching and listening. If you got any like responses or want to add to it, I've seen quite a few good comments here. Drop them in the comment thing. Pine Gap, it's supposed to have a device that goes into the ground pretty deep, and it does communications with the submarines. Yeah, I'll drop the link for that video. That was ages ago that I did that one, timeline deception. So yeah, you got to be careful what you say on YouTube. It's really hard. Yeah, it's really, really hard. But yeah, the one at Pine Gap is actually supposed to be very big. Yeah. If people knew what was actually around in all the countries and actually knew what the Earth was and what was going on, I don't think they would live or cope. I don't think they'd go outside. But yeah, I'll drop all the links for these in the description. And yeah, if you got any comments, leave them in the chat. So appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for your time. So yeah, you just got to raise your vibrations, people. Don't let all this get to you. It must happen. I know it's sad and a lot of people are going to suffer and get hurt and lose their lives, but this must happen for the next stage to move on. This place is a cesspool, total cesspool. So yeah, I'll have a look at that. I mean, I got BitChute, but I can't even upload to BitChute. It just certain topics it won't upload. It just buffers and says stuff about the title, and that's why I don't bother with BitChute. I do have it, but you know, you can't even say to your subs, go to a platform. You can't tell them, oh, I'm sick of this, go there. They can shut your channel down for that. If someone reports it and says that, oh, you tell them to leave, they can shut you down. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Yes, Siberia is really, something is off, you know. I'm just thinking, did he sell the device to someone, or because we know the Tsar was killed, you know, did he go and sell that to the Tsar? And because we know the Tsar didn't want to be part of the banking system, that's why he got killed. So I'm just starting to think, you know, did he do something on the side? He's fairly high up and he was shunned. So I'll keep researching and I'll catch you all later. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Lee. Yaz, Snap Freeze, Timeline Deception. Everyone, thank you so much. Rob, Non-Assimilated. I like that name, Non-Assimilated. Nanya, Jeff, thanks, mate. It's good to see you around too. So, yeah. All right, everyone. Raise your vibrations. God bless. Bye.